Alright, so imagine you load into a new server and your spawn point is a swamp. No farmable land, no resources, and your base is sinking. You'd leave, right? Everyone would leave, except one faction didn't. They stayed, and somehow turned that swamp into the biggest trade empire. Then they hijacked a holy war, then they unlocked tech that wasn't supposed to exist yet. This is the full playthrough of Venice. Starting with version 568, Venice has been added as a new faction, spawning in a lagoon biome after mass player displacement caused by the barbarian Zerg events. The starting stats on this one are rough. There's 0 farmable land, 0 natural resources, and a permanent environmental debuff called subsidence, which means the base is slowly sinking over time. On the upside, the shallow water terrain does grant a plus 95% siege resistance bonus against land-based armies, so the zone is almost impossible to invade by ground. Moving on to version 820. Because there are 0 viable farming nodes in the lagoon, Venice has been forced onto a different build and spec'd entirely into shipbuilding, navigation, and trade arbitrage. They're now operating as the exclusive middleman between the Byzantine Empire and Western European servers, farming the Silk Road for in-game drops like spices, silk, gemstones, and dyes through their pipeline. European buyers are paying anywhere from 300 to 1000% markup on this stuff. Next up is version 1082. The Byzantine Empire was getting raided by the Norman players on its western flank, and the Emperor Alexios I needed naval backup. Venice sent its fleet to help repel the invasion, and in exchange, Alexios granted Venetian traders a permanent tax exemption across every Byzantine trade port. The problem is, the reward massively outscaled the favor. Every other faction, including the Byzantines themselves, still has to pay standard fees. So what this amounts to is a permanent passive buff. Genoa, Pisa, and Amalfi have reported Venice for unfair gameplay to the Byzantine mods, but no action is taken as there were no game rules broken. Version 1104. Venice has unlocked a new game-breaking exploit called the Venetian Arsenal. It covers 45 hectares, which is about 15% of the city's total land area, and it's a fully walled compound with round-the-clock patrols. At peak capacity, it employs 16,000 workers, and the output is 1 fully equipped warship per day. The same exact parts are assembled each time with simple steps. This crafting system was not supposed to be available to any faction until approximately version 1900, which is the Industrial Revolution. They also noted that King Henry III of France visited and watched a full warship get assembled during a single meal. Version 1150, Venice has captured and fortified a chain of strategic ports, harbors, and islands stretching across the Mediterranean, from the Dalmatian coast through the Greek islands all the way down to Crete. Each captured location functions as a waypoint, offering resupply, safe harbor, and fast travel between zones. With a fleet of around 3,000 merchant vessels plus a full military escort, Venetian ships can now haul more loot per trip over longer distances while facing significantly less risk of PvP with pirates and rival factions. The version 1204 update brought a new co-op event called the Fourth Crusade. The objective was to raid the Middle Eastern servers and recapture Jerusalem. Venice suggested to play a support role by carrying supplies, crafting warships, and transporting the raid party under the condition the other players would cover the costs. The raid party agreed to the contract but showed up short on payment. At this point, Venice had already built the fleet and the invoice was due, so the lobby host Enrico Dandolo redirected the raid to Zara, a Christian port city on the Dalmatian coast that Venice wanted back. The raid party sacked it as a down payment. The Pope found out and excommunicated the entire raid group. Then Dandolo pinged the second waypoint, Constantinople, a friendly faction. Constantinople was sacked, the Byzantine Empire was fragmented, and Venice claimed 3/8 of the entire Byzantine Empire as loot. That includes Crete, key Aegean island chains, and strategic ports across the Eastern Mediterranean. Venice now holds an effective monopoly on Eastern Mediterranean trade lanes. Versions 1250 through 1500 cover the peak Venice era. Faction status during this window is S tier. Venice held the highest XP per capita of any faction on the European server during this period. They had a full monopoly over the spice trade, and their naval superiority was unrivaled. The government ran as a merchant oligarchy. The Doge, who is the head of state, had a hard cap on his decision-making power, and anti-tyranny checks ran regularly to prevent power struggles. For reference, other Italian factions like Florence and Milan are listed as being stuck in constant internal PvP during the same period. Version 1453. Constantinople has fallen to the Ottoman faction, which means Venice's primary eastern trade hub is now under hostile control. Venice is now locked into a 300-year PvP conflict defending its eastern territories against sweaty military builds. Venice's entire skill tree is built around trade, diplomacy, and naval logistics, none of which matter when the other faction just keeps sending armies. The Venetian base network is being dismantled one node at a time, and Crete, the crown jewel of the Stato de Mar, finally falls in the 1669 update after a 21-year siege. Version 1490. Portuguese and Spanish factions have put skill points into deep-sea naval builds and discovered new maritime routes around Africa and across the Atlantic. As a result, the global trade meta has shifted from the Mediterranean to the Atlantic. The Mediterranean, which had been the game's primary economic server for centuries, has been fully deprioritized. Venice is geographically locked in the Adriatic, with no Atlantic access, which means they are now completely excluded from the new meta. Version 15.08. This is nerf number 3 for Venice. Venice had been expanding into mainland Italy and grabbing territory from basically everyone on the server. So the Pope, France, the Holy Roman Empire, and Spain formed a coalition with one objective: completely dismantle Venice's mainland empire. They'd already split Venice's loot before the war even started. Venice managed to survive by exploiting aggro-management and internal disagreements within the league. But territorial expansion has been permanently disabled for the faction going forward. Versions 1500 through 1797 cover the long decline period where multiple debuffs are stacking up. The Black Death event keeps coming back across the European servers. The 1348 wave alone wiped 60% of the player base in a single tick. Glass and silk crafting, once flagship exports, have been undercut by cheaper European factions who reverse engineered the recipes. And the ongoing Ottoman wars are a continuous resource drain with diminishing returns. The faction's power level is shown dropping from B tier down to C tier and eventually to unranked. And finally, version 1797, the Napoleon Endgame event. The Republic of Venice has been terminated. Napoleon's forces arrived and Venice surrendered without combat. Total survival time comes in at approximately 1100 years. The final assessment is that Venice remains the single best case study in the game for how a faction with a catastrophic spawn point can reach S tier through pure strategic positioning. They controlled the infrastructure that every other faction needed: the routes, the ships, the ports, and the middleman access between East and West. The cause of death is listed as the failure to adapt to the new meta, and the retroactive recommendation is that they should have started putting skill points into Atlantic naval tech around version 1490. That's the full Venice playthrough. Thanks for watching, and see you on the next one.